So let's take a trip to the wizarding world of Harry Potter. I'm particularly thinking of the fifth story, The Order of the Phoenix, which, let me say right off the bat, is not my favorite book, not my favorite story. If I am interpreting J.K. Rowling correctly, I think there is a point kind of starting about the fourth book where she wants to lean into the teenage angst of Harry and to sort of track narratively some of the confusion and disorientation and searching for identity aspects that happen to teenagers. And because of that, in my opinion, Harry becomes very unlikable for the vast majority of the story. I have a whole rant on that of what I think of the overall stories themselves. I'm not going to belabor that right here. Many of you who know me well enough and have talked Harry Potter with me before, you know I have the same rant every time. I've got one about Star Wars too. Not going to get into that here. I am going to say, though, in this particular story, which is more recent on my mind, having read it with a family member fairly recently, is just that this is the book, the story that plays the most on the narrative of a gap, a division between the leaders who are in power and the silent leaders who are seeing things from afar and interpreting them and just at odds with the powers that be. Having said that, there are certain themes in the book that just struck me, resonated with me. There's actually a scene at the end of the book, which is one of the few times I have ever felt the action scene in the book is better than the action scene in the movie. There's a thing in the Department of Mysteries that happens in both the movie and the book, and I just feel like it was handled much more creatively and interestingly and had more time to breathe and move in the written word than it did in the visual word, which is interesting. That doesn't happen very often. But there are clear moments where people have to test their allegiances because there are two different narratives happening. Number one is that Voldemort, he who must not be named, is back, and he is working in the shadows to try and align power. And there are lots of small incremental violations against humanity that are happening, and they're very subtle. And you could chalk any one of them up to that has nothing to do with Voldemort. That could be any number of things. That could be accidents. That could be coincidences. All of those things. And then there are those who claim there's more going on than what meets the eye. And those who deny that things are going on. And those two groups, those two factions, actually begin to war against each other, so that if you deny the mainstream view of things, if you deny what the Ministry of Magic is saying, then you are an enemy of the ministry. You are an enemy of the wizarding world, and you have the right to be disciplined. You have the right to be shamed. You have the right to have power exerted over you. And this takes place in institutions of higher learning. This takes place on a personal, micro level, as well as on the macro level. People are, you see sort of the news media getting influenced by it. And it's just very fascinating. Fascinating that this isn't just fantasy or fiction. These kinds of things happen in the real world as well. As a matter of fact, My suspicion is, and I can't verify this, but that Rowling is perhaps reflecting, reiterating things from the historical past, either on the world stage or at least on the British stage, things that have happened, and how those things are sort of mirrored in this fantastical fictional story. Clearly, that isn't limited to a particular time period, even the time period when the books came out. We can often see echoes and mirrors of that in our own world. And the two strands of thought I just want to pluck out for you and examine are number one, when you have people who have seen with their own eyes firsthand accounts of darkness and of Voldemort and his minions doing things, but the narrative of those in power are that he's not back. And then they institute authority figures who, even where there's supposed to be freedom of speech and freedom of thought and expression, begin to say anyone who speaks out and who denies what the main narrative is, what the Ministry of Magic is saying, will be punished. The method of punishment that the professor who is instituted from the ministry chooses is this little writing instrument that you have to write. People like Harry have to write every time they disagree with her and offer a counter narrative, a counter truth. I must not tell lies. And the more you write it with this specially bewitched pen, it actually begins to engrave it into your flesh. It is both a method of punishment and a method of tattooing yourself, reminding yourself that you are a liar. It's an extreme form of gaslighting, if you will. In that theme, this happens in the movie, not in the book. There's an incredible reversal where the professor who is enforcing this and denying that you are allowed to have experienced any other truth or have any other narrative than what the official Ministry of Magic narrative is. When she gets captured by some magical creatures in the dark forest, she asks Harry, who's witnessing it, to tell the centaurs, the magical creatures, that she is innocent, that she needs to be let go, that they should listen to her, that they're wrong about her. Harry repeats the line back to her that he's had to engrave on a piece of paper and in his own flesh again and again and again. I'm sorry, Professor, but I must not tell lies. Clever turn of events that the cinema uses versus the written tale. The other aspect I want to mention, which again I think is different in the book than in the movie. In the book, Dumbledore and Harry are having a conversation, if I remember correctly. And Harry is very distraught and very upset about having lost some loved ones. And Dumbledore says something like, do not pity the dead, Harry, but pity the living, especially all of those who live without love. There's an ongoing question in the story if Harry has more in common, historically, biologically, and even in his wizarding gift set with Voldemort, with the enemy, than he does with his loved ones. And Dumbledore points out for him, it isn't what we have in common with darkness that's important. It's the differences that we have. And then he keeps reminding her, you have the capacity to love. That's what sets you apart. That's what makes you different. In the movie, I believe they take that a step further, and in a confrontation with Voldemort, Harry says to him when Voldemort accuses him and is clearly defeating him, and Voldemort says, "You are weak." And Harry says, "I'm not the weak one. You are, because you will never know love and you will never know friendship, and therefore I pity you." And that actually pains Voldemort more than anything else, any other magic can, and he has to flee the scene. Now, when you put those two strands together, and when you hold up fiction as a mirror to our world and our situations, I can't help but see an awful lot of crossovers. I can't help but wonder if there are certain narratives that are just being pushed and certain ways of existing that are so demanding and so forceful that there is no room for disagreement. And if you disagree, you are shamed, you are punished, you are ostracized, you are outcast, and you are labeled the liar. But if we learn anything from the narrative of the Order of the Phoenix, any history, any truth, deeper truth, I think we can come back to those two things. It is important to tell truth even when the rest of the world and the rest of those in power don't want to hear it. The truth is still the truth, and it's important. It's important for us to bear witness to the truth. And it's important to remember that love isn't what makes us weak. It's what makes us different. Different than the darkness, different than the true enemy. And at the end of the day, love is our ultimate strength. May you take encouragement in that. May you withstand the dark times. May you not be crushed under the weight of those who must not be named. But may you persevere, knowing it is more about what makes us different than is what makes us similar.